In the last episode, we asked a dangerous question. Why was the North Pole once mapped in detail and later reduced to blankness? Tonight we go deeper, because once you begin to question the map, you inevitably arrive at something older than geography, orientation, even civilization. No matter how distant in time or culture, shared one strange agreement. North matters, not symbolically, not metaphorically, physically. When ancient people looked at the sky, they didn't see chaos. They saw structure. And at the center of that structure was a single, unmoving point, Polaris, the North Star. While the rest of the heavens wheeled overhead, Polaris remained fixed, night after night, century after century. That alone is extraordinary. But what matters more is how humanity interpreted it. Ancient cultures did not describe the world as flying randomly through space. They described it as organized, layered, and centered. They spoke of a vertical axis, a spine around which everything moved. This idea appears everywhere. In Norse tradition, it is the world tree. In Vedic cosmology, the cosmic pillar. In ancient Near Eastern myth, the mountain of assembly. In countless traditions, the same structure appears again and again. A central axis connecting heaven, earth, and the depths below. This concept has a name, the axis of the world, the axis of Mundi. And almost without exception, it points north. Now pause here, because this wasn't poetic language. It was practical. Navigation depended on it. Calendars depended on it. Rituals dependent on it. Entire civilizations aligned their cities, temples, and monuments to this invisible spine. If the Earth were experienced as a spinning object hurtling through empty space, this obsession would make no sense. But if the world were understood as a realm, structured, circulating, and ordered, then the axis becomes essential, a reference point, a stabilizer, a center. And this brings us back to water. Because ancient cosmology did not describe motion as linear, it described it as circulation. Water flows, air circulates, energy spirals, tides rise and fall with rhythm, not randomness. Oceans don't move in straight lines, they curve, loop, and return. What if the ancients weren't describing fantasy, but patterns? What if the 4 rivers depicted on ancient polar maps weren't literal streams you could sail, but representations of circulation? Currents converging, forces balancing, movement returning to source. In this model, the pole is not a destination. It is a regulator, a drain, a source, a center of balance. And ice begins to look different, not as emptiness, but as accumulation, not as lifeless, but as boundary. Ice preserves, ice encases. Ice forms where motion slows and pressure builds. What if polar ice isn't evidence of abandonment, but evidence of structure holding? Now consider this. If a civilization understood the world through circularization and axis, and later a new worldview replaced that understanding, what would have to disappear? The center, the axis, the mountain. The idea that the world is organized around something fixed. Because once you remove the axis, orientation collapses. Up and down lose meaning. Center and edge dissolve. And power becomes easier to centralize elsewhere. Not in the sky, not in the world itself, but in institutions, in authorities, in those who claim to explain reality for you. This is why symbolism matters. The compass, the square, the grid. These are not decorations. They are echoes of an older understanding, geometry imposed on chaos, orientation imposed on mystery. And here's the part few people notice. Even today, we still orient ourselves by north. Maps default to it. Compasses seek it. Flight paths account for it. The modern world pretends the pole is irrelevant, while quietly depending on it for everything. So tonight, I'm not telling you the earth is flat. I'm not telling you it's hollow. I'm not telling you there is a literal mountain of magnetic stone at the top of the world. I'm asking something far more important. Why did humanity once believe the world had a center? And why are we now told it doesn't? Why does Polaris remain fixed while everything else moves? Why does water circulate instead of escape? Why does the pole remain restricted, blurred, and symbolically erased? And why do ancient stories, separated by oceans and millennia, all describe the same structure? An axis, a pillar. A world organized, not adrift. If the first episode was about what disappeared from the map, this episode is about what disappeared from understanding. Because when you remove the axis, you don't just lose direction, you lose context. You forget where you are. And perhaps more importantly, you forget that the world may not be random at all. Next time, we'll move outward, from the center to the periphery, to Greenland, and to why control of the edges may be just as important as control of the center. Because in every system, those who guard the boundaries often know more than those who live inside them.